Hey there, happy Thursday morning. I'm Connie Fuchsa with Foot Title Group. Welcome to Coffee with Connie. Hope you guys are having a great start to your Thursday morning. I'm so excited to talk to you guys today. We have so much excitement going on. It's so many things that we're working on for you to bring you more information, to bring you more help with understanding your home closing. And today I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about the home protection, title insurance, what all does that really mean? Because there's all these terms going on that are hard to navigate. So we wanted to talk a little bit more about that stuff today. Good morning, my friend, Miss Pam. How are you today? Happy Thursday to you. So yesterday, did you catch our interview with our Virginia office manager where she was talking about some crazy things that she's had going on recently with a title that she's been trying to clear up? If you missed it, you got to go back and check it out. She gives you some great information about how we research the title on a property that you may be purchasing, and some of the things that can come up and some of the things that we actually work on to get resolved before your closing actually happens. It was a great interview, very impromptu after we realized some things that were going on in a file that Vicky's working on, and you got to catch it. It was really good information. It was yesterday afternoon. Gosh, I don't know, right around 2 o'clock. So hopefully you can tune into that. So let me first say thank you so much for your time this morning. I realize how valuable your time is, and it's really important to me that I let you know how much that means to me that you take that time. If you are on live with us, please check in and let me know that you're on. I'd love to have conversations with people and find out what kind of things are questions that you may have, or things that you maybe don't understand about what we're talking about now, or it doesn't even have to be about something we're talking about today. It could be something that we're talking about or we've talked about in the past, or that we need to talk about that maybe you don't understand about the home buying, home selling, mortgage financing, settlement, closing process. We want to make sure that all that stuff is clear and helpful for you. So that's why we do what we do, and that's why we do Coffee with Connie 3 days a week. And we also are doing some live interaction videos with some of our team members and maybe some people that come into the office. So, excuse me. So hopefully we have some really good information for you and you're getting really good benefit. And the other thing I ask you is, if you like the stuff we're talking about, please share it with others, because there's so many people out there that don't know a lot of the things that we're talking about, and I can't reach all those people that you know. Only you can, and maybe there's something that we're talking about that they may need to help them out with their home closing. So I would really appreciate it if you share. And if you're tuning in on a recorded replay, I really appreciate your time so much as well. I know I do this in the morning during the work week, and sometimes that's a little hard for those of you that work a 9-to-5 schedule or something similar to that, because you're busy doing what you need to do to take care of your family and pay your bills. So I really appreciate your replay playing. And two, if you find it as good information, please do share. There's a button right on the bottom. All you have to do is hit share, and you can share it on your page. So thanks so much for tuning in. So let's talk for a minute. We've been talking about protecting your home ownership. What does that really mean? We talked a little bit about title insurance earlier in the week, and what the heck is that? So I'm going to touch on that a little bit again. But the thing I really wanted to touch on today was, if you buy a brand new home, so isn't that already all taken care of? You know, there can't possibly be any problem with the ownership, because, you know, the builder just purchased the land and they built a new house. So I want to talk about that for a minute, because that's a common question I get all the time. So first, let's talk about what does it mean to protect your home ownership. So first of all, that means that we, as I said yesterday when we did our video, when we first get your order for your new for your closing for the new home that you're purchasing, we do a couple of things. We order a title search, because we want to make sure that that property that you're purchasing, the people that have signed the contract to sell it to you actually own that property, and that all of them are included. And if they're not, what's happened? Why are they not included, and why are they not signing those documents? Because the only way to transfer that ownership is to actually sign a deed transferring the title. So that's the first part that we do. And if we come across some things that may be concerns that could cause you a problem with your ownership, we work really hard to get those cleared up. And that's one of the things we talked about yesterday with an estate issue in Virginia, with a person that passed away, how that actually is a little different in Virginia than it is in Maryland, and what those steps are, and kind of a quirky deal that we were working on in Virginia that was having some steps that needed to be taken care of once we ordered that title. So, hey Jeff, how are you this morning? Thanks for tuning in. So we order that title search, and we actually review all of that information. So when we talk about a title search, the title is the chain or following the ownership of that property from when it was originally owned. Now we do a 60-year title search to check and see who's owned it and what's happened to that piece of property you want to purchase for the last 60 years. Because we feel like if it's happened before 60 years, in a lot of cases there's some legislative orders that say things that are certain years of age that won't affect that property anymore as long as nothing's been filed. So we feel like if we go back 60 years, that covers anything that could be something that could affect you, and we make sure that those things are cleared up. So when we order that title search, we actually have somebody who works in the courthouse that searches those land records and pulls all those documents and all that information from those previous owners. And then we actually review all that information, and we make sure all the pieces are in order. So all the right owners have transferred their interest through that 60 years, that all of the encumbrances, things that people that they owed money to were actually paid off, and that those documents were released from the land records and from the ownership of that property. And we also look for, did anybody have a ownership interest in a piece of it? And we've talked about this a little bit before, right-of-ways, and easements, and what some of those things are. And that is a ownership step 2, and that, you know, we want to make sure that you purchasing understand what those things are, and if there's anything that needs to be cleared up, that we do. And you would be surprised more often than not how often we have to go and tweak some things or resolve some things before we can actually go to closing. So the other thing is that's really important, and we don't always talk about this, but at closing, you know, of course, you know closing to be, well, that's where I pay all of the money, and that's where I sign all these papers. Well, part of that title being clear and protecting your home ownership is making sure that all those documents are signed properly, in the right place, on the right time, the right people signing them, and signing them with the right name, that, or the same name that the loan is done in. Also, that all of the people that need to sign those documents, putting it in your name, have signed them. So there's a lot of things that actually happen at the closing table that can affect that as well. So we make sure that those are all taken care of. And then when you are done with closing, we actually produce what's called a title insurance policy for you. And we talked about this a little bit earlier this week. But a title insurance policy protects your ownership interest, where a homeowner's policy would protect the structure and your belongings inside the property. The title insurance protects your ownership. So it's good for as long as you own the property, you or your heirs, and there's no additional cost for it. So when you pay for it at closing, that's a one-time thing. Now, the lender that you borrow all of this money from, that is going to give you that money to buy this new home that you've purchased, they are going to require that they have title insurance that protect their loan. And so wouldn't it make sense that if they require that title insurance be done for their protection, then you have that same protection by purchasing owner's title insurance. Now, your owner's title insurance at the closing is an optional coverage, but I recommend that you always purchase this. So today we talked a little bit we were going to talk a little bit about when you're buying a brand new home from a builder, and why do you need that? Why does it matter? Because you're buying this brand new home, no one else owned this. Well, you're viewing it, when you're asking that question, as the home being what's protected. And it is, but you also have a piece of property that that home sits on, and that piece of property has been there a whole lot longer than when that builder just purchased it. So let's use a couple examples of things that could happen. So let's say that the owner that sold it to the builder, maybe it was a farm, and the builder purchased this farm and divided up that property, because they are building homes on each of those pieces that they divided up, and then they're selling out each of those individual pieces. Well, let's say when they purchased that property, it was owned by a family who, the original owner passed away, and now all of the heirs or the people in that family that have a right to that property, they all had to sign off on that. And let's say maybe one of them had passed away and their children also needed to sign off. So you can see this family tree starts getting involved, and you got to make sure, we do as a title company, that all of those people that had an ownership interest actually signed off. And this is true whether it's building a new home, buying a new home with a piece of property that was subdivided or divided up to build those houses on, or if it is a home that's already existing. So those kind of things can be problems or things that needed to be addressed. And if those weren't taken care of, and all of those people didn't sign off on that, even though the builder owned it, may not have owned it long enough for one of those concerns to arise and come to notice to the people that should have been signing off. And there is an ownership interest there that needs to be addressed. So maybe that's part of it. Maybe there is, a lot of the similar things that could happen with a piece of property that is being transferred that has been, had a home on it for, 20 years, 30 years, 50 years, whatever that case may be. Those same concerns in that chain of ownership could also be concerns if you're buying a brand new house from a builder. So the problem is, a lot of times people just assume, consumers assume that when you're buying a brand new house that, that of course the builder's done a check on all of the property, and that now you have a brand new house and you really don't need insurance because it's a brand new house. Well, that owner's title insurance policy will protect you from all of the things that happened in the past on that property that could come to be a problem right now. And that matters because you don't know what could have happened to that property, and you don't know what someone else did as far as taking care of that ownership. So that insurance will protect you about anything that could have come up before you actually took ownership. Maybe there was a loan that the previous owner or a couple of owners had. Maybe it was an equity line that they put in a road, had somebody put in a road on that property to get to a piece of property behind it. There's a lot of different things. Maybe there was a right-of-way on the piece of property, or here's something that happens a lot on a farm. Well, let me finish that thought. Maybe there's a right-of-way, which a right-of-way is a legal document that grants a ownership use to someone else to go through your property. So the right-of-way may be that maybe the piece of property that the builder purchased. Good morning, Kelly. Good morning, Kathy Whitethorn. Good morning, Gerald. Thank you guys all so much for tuning in. So the right-of-way, maybe if the builder purchased a big farm because he was building some homes on that, on those pieces of property once he divided them up, maybe that farm has a right-of-way that isn't very easy to see because no one ever actually put the road in. Doesn't mean that the right-of-way doesn't exist. It just means that no one took use of that ownership by putting a road in there. Well, if that road is there and it's not, maybe the gravel wasn't put down or whatever, but the right-of-way is there, and maybe it goes right through one of the lots. Maybe it's the one that you purchased from the builder and your new house is sitting on, and maybe that right-of-way goes right through the middle of your house. Well, if you're buying that piece of property and you don't have insurance to protect you, that could be a problem. That person who has the right-of-way, maybe it goes from the main road through through somebody else's property, then through the farm where the builder purchased this farm, divided all these pieces up, built homes on all these pieces, and then sold them, and then that right-of-way goes to a piece of property behind the farm that the builder purchased. Well, if the person who buys that piece of property behind where the property is that the builder purchased, they have the right to go through that right-of-way, build a road, and use that right-of-way to get to that property. So if they choose to, they can actually bring a lawsuit against anyone that is in the way of that right-of-way so that they can build that road so they can actually get to it. So you're buying a brand new house from a builder, you think, wow, everybody's done their due diligence and there's no issues with that. Well, that may or may not be true. The thing that you want to make sure is that your ownership is protected, and there's no way to know that if maybe you didn't see the road, maybe it wasn't a problem, it didn't appear to be on the visual to be a problem with that. So that's a kind of thing. Let's talk about, here's another thing that is really something that you may not know, may not be able to see, but you're buying a brand new piece of property. And this is a very old title concern that has to be dealt with all the time. And yeah, you may drive down the road and you might be out in really rural areas where there's a lot of farms, and you may drive by and you see this old graveyard where the tombstones are leaning, and it's out in the middle of a field somewhere, and it has a little picket fence around it, really cool. Sometimes that might be some really great history to look at. Well, all right, let's look at it from a ownership perspective of a piece of property. So let's say that the property that you're buying from the builder, he bought a big farm, he divided it all up, he built homes on those different pieces that he divided up, and he started selling those out. Well, one thing about a graveyard is, first of all, the graveyard can never be touched by anybody but the by the heirs of those graves. And in most cases, I'm not even sure that I know one that it doesn't, there is a right-of-way that goes to that graveyard from a main road. And what happens is, let's say that graveyard is from 1820, and none of the family members ever go to that graveyard, maybe they don't even know about it. That graveyard is a sacred area, and that right-of-way has to always, always, always be given in existence, because the heirs of those individuals have to be able to get to that property. Even if they never did, maybe they don't know about it, but let's say that they did know about it and they find out about it, tomorrow, and they found out that, these are their heirs from back in the 1800s. Well, they legally have the right forever and ever and ever to be able to get to that graveyard. Well, let's say it goes right through the farm, and that right-of-way goes right through the side of your property. You cannot block it. They have the right forever and ever to be able to go through wherever it is to get from the main road to that graveyard. So, that's another example of something that the builder's not going to even know, because that's not the builder's, in that builder's purview. He's going to hope that whoever did that closing for him and previous closing companies actually reviewed that chain of title, saw that right-of-way was in there, and made some accommodations that people understand it, and that he set that aside when he was dividing up his lots and made that right-of-way access available, whether anybody uses it or not. So that's something that's really important to understand, that just because you're buying a new home from a builder, a brand new home, that need for title insurance is really important. Because if somebody comes through and says, hey, I just found out that this is my great uncle 10 times removed, and I want to be able to go visit these grave sites, they have to get the right to do that. And if you say no, then they're probably, then they have the legal right to take you to court. Is it legal to remove the right-of-way? It has to go through a court system, legal court process. Can it be removed? I'm not sure I know that one has been. I think typically what would happen if that was the case is they would probably move the graveyard, then the right-of-way would then be removed. That's what I've heard in the past. As you know, these aren't super common things, but you don't always know where that happens to be. I mean, I know a piece of property that we used to live on, we were, it was in the woods near a creek, and we were exploring one time, and we found a graveyard way back in the woods that you wouldn't even know is there. So probably the people that are heirs of those graves probably don't even know that's there, and maybe never do. But if they find out about it, then they do have the right to do it. So you as the owner could go to the court and say, look, I need to vacate this right away, or maybe move it, and going through that process. It's a legal process to have that. And that would be true for any kind of right of way. So if you have a neighbor that owns a piece of property behind you, and when you buy a piece of property, that it has a right of way that goes through it to get to their property, but maybe they've never used it, and you find out about it, and you go to them and say, hey, look, you actually use another road, can we get rid of this right away? It's a legal process. So you actually have to go to the court and say, we have determined that our neighbor doesn't use this right away. Can we move it, or can we get it vacated? So it is a legal process, a little bit of an expense, but yeah, I think it probably can be done in the graveyard situation. I doubt you're going to be able to remove it, but I think you can petition to have it moved, because at some point you have those graves that are always going to be there unless they move the graves. And in that case, then you would be able to, along with the process of moving them, legally go in and have that right of way vacated. So, and having the right of way removed or taken away is called vacating it. So hopefully that answered that question. Yeah, rerouting. Yep, that's an easier term. Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks for the question, Kelly. Appreciate it. Good morning, Karen Hogue. How are you today? Good morning, honey. Thanks for tuning in. My husband Todd's such a good supporter, so I appreciate you always taking the time to tune in. Thanks so much. So hopefully that answered some questions for you guys, but it gave you another reason to understand why title insurance is so important. And when you go to closing, it's one of those things, it's not a warranty. I mean, I know I'm one of those who's really bad about not purchasing warranties when I buy a piece of equipment, because I feel like, usually I'm going to get the life out of them and hopefully I don't have that problem. But this is not a warranty situation. This is you are buying an insurance policy that protects your ownership. And if you don't understand that, the things that could happen with your title, that's what I want to try to talk to you about. And that's why we have so much information on our website, because the people that do your closing, first of all, need to be really good at what they're doing. They have to review the title for all of these things and make sure you know about them and that those things are addressed and you understand them. And take care of any of these kind of things. And there's a lot of that goes on behind the scenes that you may not know about. So one of the reasons I talk about protecting your home ownership and choosing your title company is because the person and the company that does your closing needs to have some really good experience understanding these things, particularly when you're dealing in rural areas that have all of these different nuances. Even in newer areas, when you talk about areas that have new construction, and they have a lot of have building going on in these big neighborhoods that have been built. Maybe they're 10 years old, maybe they're 20 years old. Those things could potentially still come up. The graveyard issue, that may be something that could come up 20 years from now. So that insurance is going to protect you for as long as you own that property. It's a one-time cost. It is a percentage of the purchase price that you're purchasing. It's based on that amount. And you only have to pay it when you come to closing. And title insurance does not have a deductible. So it's the only insurance out there that if you ever have to use it, you don't have to pay a portion of that loss. So, and what you would do is call the insurance company and say, hey, look, somebody's contacted me. I have this potential problem. Oh my gosh, what do I do? And the title insurance companies have attorneys that step in your shoes and start working on resolving the issue for you. So just that's a little bit of history, but I really wanted to talk about that common question that I get all the time. If I'm buying a brand new house from a builder, why do I need this insurance? And so that gives you some ideas. I mean, some of that may seem extreme to you, but believe me, when it comes up, it's catastrophic because you are sitting in your home and somebody says, hey, look, I have this right, or, I have this ownership. And now all of a sudden your ownership comes into question. And the house that you've spent all this money, all this time looking for, decorating it, you're happy and living in there, and now you've got to deal with some of those things. So you don't want to have to defend that on your own. It can be very costly, as I'm sure you're aware. And the other thing about title insurance is it covers those legal fees. It is all inclusive, so you don't have to pay any additional costs for legal fees, which imagine, I have a lot of friends who are attorneys that are great people, but having a lawyer work for you is very expensive. I mean, the per hour cost can range anywhere from $150 to $500 an hour, depending on what they do. So that cost is included in your title insurance coverage. So hopefully that gave you a little help. Thanks so much for the questions. I appreciate it. Thanks so much for tuning in today. Really appreciate that. Again, if I gave you information that you think is valuable, please share. There's a little share button down there, and you can share it with the people that I can't get to talk to. I'm really excited to tell you that if you enjoyed this, and maybe you've heard, but we're going to have an interactive webinar. It's going to be in the evening because I know that a lot of you have families that you're getting home from work, you have to get homework done, you have to get dinner going, and so we're doing it a little bit later and in the evening. It's going to be on November 15th at 7 p.m. It's the 5 most important things you need to know for your home closing. Please share that. It's on our website. There's a link under the homepage under events. You can go in and register. It's in social media. We've been emailing it out. Please share that as well. There's only 100 spots, so you need to get in. If you're not registered, you need to get in there and get that on. And tell everybody you know about it, because we want to do not only me talking to everybody, but where everybody's talking to each other. You have questions, you have concerns, share that information, and you can talk to each other about maybe some experiences that you've had. So we are super excited to share that information. And again, that's November 15th at 7 p.m. And I just wanted to remind you about all the resources on our website that can help you answer some of these questions, or share them with people. You know, there's a home buyer's guide, there's a home seller's guide, there's a planning your move checklist, there's sample documents if you want to know what it looks like when you sit down at that closing table and you have to review all those documents. This way it gives you a little bit advance time to look at some of that stuff in advance. So hopefully you got some good, valuable information this morning. I really appreciate your time. I'm Connie Fuchsa with Foot Title Group. It matters who you choose to do your home closing just as much as it matters who you choose to work with to help you find that perfect home and that perfect mortgage. So I hope you take the opportunity to make the right choice for yourself, and tune in again. We will be talking to you soon. I really appreciate your time. I'm Connie Fuchsa with Foot Title Group, where we protect your home ownership. Have a great day, everybody, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.